Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The dimmed conference room held its breath as the laptop's screen flickered, painting the solemn-faced executives with its fleeting bluish hue. The financial report, meticulously prepared for this moment, faltered and froze. At this very moment, the presentation stopped abruptly. Palms perspired, tense against the clicker, as apprehension choked him. Desperately, Ashton Mills tried to revive the laptop, their fingers dancing frenetically over the unresponsive keyboard. Just a moment. Unexpectedly, the computer reset to reveal not sales data, but a display of pictures. The brilliant slideshow exposed the secret identity of Ashton. Catalina was revealed. There she stood, captured in a vibrant blue dress, shimmering beneath artificial lights, draped like expensive fabric over her toned figure. The blood drained from Ashton's face as trembling fingers slammed the laptop shut. The damage was done. Several seconds of excruciating silence followed, broken only by the sound of chair legs scraping against hardwood as Mr. Thompson, the company's CEO, stood up.
"Perhaps we should take a brief recess,"
he announced, his expression unreadable behind steel-rimmed glasses.
"We'll reconvene in 15 minutes.
The executives filed out, whispering among themselves. Ashton remained frozen at the podium, knuckles white against the edge of the table.
"My office, please,"
Mr. Thompson said quietly as he passed. Not a request, a command. The walk to the executive suite felt like a death march. Each step on the plush carpet brought Ashton closer to what would surely be the end of a promising career. 3 years of dedicated work at Thompson Financial Advisors, gone in an instant because of a screensaver and a malfunctioning laptop. Mr. Thompson's office occupied the corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. He was already seated behind his imposing desk when Ashton entered.
"Close the door,"
he instructed, removing his glasses and pinching the bridge of his nose. Ashton obeyed, heart hammering wildly against ribs.
"Sir, I can explain."
Mr. Thompson held up a hand.
"We'll discuss this later. For now, I need you to pull yourself together and finish your presentation. The Peterson account is too important."
You still want me to present?
"Of course. Your personal life is your business."
His tone was clipped, professional.
"But I do think we should have a conversation. Dinner, perhaps. Tonight, after we've both had time to process what happened."
The rest of the day passed in a blur. Somehow, Ashton managed to complete the presentation using the backup files on a flash drive. The executives asked appropriate questions, took notes, and made no mention of the incident. But their sideways glances and hushed conversations in the hallway afterward told a different story. At 5 o'clock, a text message arrived from Mr. Thompson.
"Marcello's, 7:30. This isn't optional."
Marcello's was an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place where business deals were sealed over expensive wine and pasta that cost more than a day's salary. Ashton arrived early, dressed in a conservative charcoal gray suit, and requested a corner table. Mr. Thompson appeared precisely at 7:30, his commanding presence drawing the attention of nearby diners. He slid into the seat across from Ashton, ordered a Scotch neat, and studied the menu without speaking. After the waiter took their orders and disappeared, Mr. Thompson finally broke the silence.
"I imagine today has been difficult for you."
Ashton swallowed hard.
"Sir, about what happened. Richard, please. We're not in the office now."
He took a slow sip of his scotch.
"Tell me about Catalina."
The question hung in the air between them. This was it. The moment that would determine everything. Catalina is me, another side of me. The words came hesitantly at first, then in a rush. I've been cross-dressing since college. It's not something I do at work or in public, usually. It's private. Richard nodded thoughtfully. The blue dress suited you. Good color choice. Of all possible responses, this was the least expected. Ashton blinked in confusion. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? Because one of my top financial analysts likes to wear dresses in his spare time. Richard chuckled. Ashton, do you know why I asked you here tonight? To fire me discreetly? That earned a genuine laugh. No, I brought you here because 25 years ago, I was in your position. Well, not exactly your position. We didn't have digital screensavers back then. But I know what it's like to keep that part of yourself hidden. The confession landed like a bombshell. Richard Thompson, 6'2" former college football player, divorced father of 3, and respected CEO, had just admitted to being a cross-dresser. You? Ashton couldn't hide the shock. Me. Richard nodded. For nearly 30 years now. Although these days, Veronica only makes appearances a few times a month. Life gets busy. The waiter returned with their appetizers, forcing a pause in the conversation. When they were alone again, Ashton leaned forward. I don't understand. If you're like me, why haven't you ever said anything? The same reason you haven't, I imagine. Richard speared a calamari with his fork. It's personal, private, not something I advertise, especially not in our industry. But I recognized something in you from the beginning, a certain carefulness, the way you notice women's accessories and compliment them appropriately without overstepping. Little things. Ashton's mind reeled with this revelation. So, you've suspected all along? Let's say I had an inkling. Today just confirmed it. Richard set down his fork. Look, Ashton, you're excellent at your job. Your presentation today, despite the technical difficulties, was spot on. That's all that matters to me as your employer. Relief washed over Ashton like a warm tide. Thank you, sir, Richard. But as someone who's walked in similar shoes, quite literally, I thought you might appreciate knowing you're not alone. The conversation flowed more easily after that. As they worked through their main courses, Ashton found himself sharing details he'd never spoken aloud to anyone. I have a routine, he admitted, twirling pasta around his fork. Every night, after work, I change into a satin nightgown. I have several, but the cream-colored one is my favorite. Then I practice makeup techniques I've learned from YouTube tutorials. I'm still terrible at contouring. Richard nodded in understanding. The learning curve is steep. It took me years to master winged eyeliner. How do you... does anyone in your life know? My ex-wife discovered some of Veronica's clothes about 12 years ago. It was part of why we divorced, though not the only reason. Richard's expression darkened momentarily. My current partner knows. She's supportive, even helps me shop occasionally. My children don't know, though I sometimes think about telling them. The evening stretched on, their shared secret creating an unexpected bond. By the time dessert arrived, Ashton felt a weight lifting, the burden of solitary secrecy partially relieved by simple recognition. So, what happens now? Ashton asked as the waiter brought the check. Now? Nothing changes at work. You continue being our star analyst. What you do in your personal time remains your business. Richard signed the receipt with a flourish. But perhaps Catalina and Veronica could meet sometime. It gets lonely,
this double life. Having friends who understand. It matters.
2 weeks passed. At the office, nothing seemed different on the surface. The incident with the laptop was never mentioned, though Ashton noticed Richard would occasionally give a subtle nod of understanding when they passed in the hallway. It was a silent acknowledgement of their shared secret, a private communication in the midst of corporate bustle. Then came the fateful Saturday at Westfield Mall. Ashton had ventured into a department store, drawn to a display of spring dresses. A lavender sundress with a sweetheart neckline and A-line skirt had caught his eye. Before he could think better of it, he had taken it to the fitting room, heart racing with each step. The dress fit perfectly, the color complementing his skin tone in a way that made his brown hair seem richer, more vibrant. Ashton turned slowly before the mirror, admiring the gentle swish of fabric around his knees. So entranced was he that he failed to notice the fitting room door hadn't fully latched behind him. The door swung open. Standing there, shopping bags in hand, were Mark Jenkins and Devin Williams, both junior analysts from his department at Thomson Financial.
Ashton.
Mark's voice cracked with disbelief. Panic froze Ashton in place, one hand still smoothing the lavender fabric over his hip. There was no explaining this away, no plausible deniability. He was caught, exposed in the most vulnerable way possible. Devin's mouth twisted into a cruel smile.
Wait till HR hears about this. Our team leader playing dress-up. This isn't... I was just...
The words died in Ashton's throat. What could he possibly say?
Save it,
Mark sneered.
We always thought there was something off about you. Now we know.
They left, their laughter echoing behind them. Ashton changed back into his jeans and navy polo shirt with shaking hands, the joy of the moment thoroughly shattered. By Monday, the whole office would know. His career, the respect he'd worked so hard to earn, all of it would be gone. Monday arrived with the inevitability of a tidal wave. Ashton entered the office with his head high, though his insides churned with anxiety. The whispers started immediately. Coworkers who normally greeted him warmly suddenly found their computer screens fascinating as he passed. By mid-morning, he was called to HR. Brenda Donovan, the Human Resources Director, regarded him with careful neutrality as he took a seat across from her desk. "I understand there was an incident over the weekend," she began. Ashton nodded, throat tight.
"I assume Mark and Devin have already given you their version."
"They've made certain allegations. But before we proceed, Mr. Thompson has asked to join us." She pressed a button on her desk phone. "Sir, we're ready for you." Richard entered, his expression giving nothing away. He closed the door firmly behind him and took the seat beside Ashton. "I understand 2 of our junior analysts encountered Ashton at the mall on Saturday," he stated. Brenda nodded. "Yes, and they've expressed concerns about finding one of our most valued employees trying on clothing in a private fitting room?" Richard interrupted.
"I fail to see how this is a company matter."
"Sir, they claim he was wearing women's clothing."
"And?"
Richard's voice took on a dangerous edge.
"Is there a dress code for off-duty employees that I'm unaware of? Something in our company handbook that dictates what our staff can or cannot wear on their personal time?"
Brenda shifted uncomfortably.
"No, but..." "Then I believe we're done here."
Richard stood.
"Unless Ashton wishes to file a harassment complaint against Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Williams for invading his privacy and subsequently attempting to create a hostile work environment, which, Ashton, I would fully support if that's your decision."
The HR director looked between them,
clearly caught off guard by this turn of events.
Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, Brenda, I will not tolerate workplace harassment of any kind in my company. What our employees do outside of work hours is their business, provided it's legal and doesn't affect their job performance.
Richard placed a hand on Ashton's shoulder.
Ashton's work has been exemplary. That's all that matters to me.
Ashton sat in stunned silence, relief and gratitude washing over him in equal measure. Richard wasn't finished.
Furthermore, I want Mark and Devon in this office within the hour for a discussion about professional boundaries and the company's zero-tolerance policy on gossip and harassment.
After they left HR, Richard led Ashton to a quiet corner of the break room.
Thank you,
Ashton said quietly.
You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did.
Richard's voice was firm.
Not just because I understand personally, but because it was the right thing to do. What you choose to wear doesn't affect your ability to analyze market trends or advise clients.
That conversation marked a turning point. Over the following months, something shifted both within Ashton and within the company culture. The whispers died down. Mark and Devon kept their distance, their planned character assassination thwarted by the CEO's unexpected support. More importantly, Ashton began to feel the suffocating pressure of his double life ease slightly. Though he remained discreet, he no longer felt the paralyzing fear of discovery. Richard's acceptance had shown him that his value as a person and as a professional wasn't diminished by Catalina's existence. One evening after work, Ashton found a small gift bag on his desk. Inside was a tube of high-end lipstick in a shade called Lavender Dream, with a note card that read simply, "This would complement that sundress perfectly. R." The gesture brought tears to his eyes, not just for the gift itself, but for what it represented. Understanding, acceptance, the relief of being seen fully and not rejected. That night, Ashton made a decision. Standing before his bathroom mirror in the cream satin nightgown that had become a nightly comfort, he studied his reflection. The brown hair that he usually kept short and professionally styled was growing out, now long enough to tuck behind his ears. His features, which he'd always thought of as plainly masculine, possessed a softness he was only beginning to appreciate.
What if,
he whispered to his reflection,
Catalina didn't have to be just a nighttime secret?
The thought had been growing for weeks, taking root in the fertile soil of Richard's support and his own increasing discomfort with the compartmentalization of his life. What if the division between Ashton and Catalina could begin to blur? What if they could become one integrated person? He tried the lipstick, the lavender shade bringing warmth to his complexion. It was subtle enough that, with the right outfit, it might pass as professional, a small step toward bringing Catalina into the daylight. The following day, Ashton wore the lipstick to work, paired with a conservative gray suit and white button-down. If anyone noticed, they didn't comment. Richard passed him in the hallway and gave an approving nod, but said nothing. It was a small beginning, but it felt monumental. Weeks passed, and with each one, Ashton found small ways to integrate aspects of Catalina into his daily life. Clear nail polish, a slightly more feminine cut to his shirts, growing his brown hair longer and styling it in a way that could read as either a stylish men's cut or a short women's style. Richard remained supportive, occasionally offering subtle advice or encouragement.
The lavender button-down brings out your eyes,
he might comment in passing. Or,
that messenger bag has a nice unisex design.
6 months after the laptop incident,
Ashton attended a dinner party at Richard's suburban home, meeting Veronica for the first time. Seeing his mentor transformed, elegant in a black cocktail dress, silver jewelry catching the light, was a revelation. There was such comfort, such naturalness in the way Richard moved as Veronica, greeting guests and laughing easily. It showed Ashton what might be possible.
"You make it look so effortless,"
Ashton confided as they stood together in Richard's kitchen, away from the other guests. "It wasn't always," Veronica admitted, adjusting a silver bracelet. "For years, I kept Veronica locked away, except for occasional nights alone. The compartmentalization was exhausting. It took my divorce to make me realize I needed to stop fighting against myself." "Is that what I'm doing? Fighting against myself?" "Only you can answer that." Veronica handed him a glass of wine. "But I will say this. Since you've started incorporating more of Catalina into your everyday appearance, you seem lighter, happier." It was true. The constant vigilance, the rigid separation between his daytime and nighttime selves, had been draining him for years without him fully realizing it.
"I'm thinking of taking a bigger step,"
Ashton confessed.
"I've been researching hormone therapy."
Veronica's eyebrows rose slightly.
"That's significant."
"I know. It scares me. But lately, I've been wondering if cross-dressing is enough anymore. If it ever was." Ashton stared into his wine glass.
"When I'm Catalina, I feel whole. When I'm Ashton, I feel like I'm playing a part." "Have you spoken with a gender therapist?"
Ashton nodded.
3 sessions so far. She's been helpful, but I wanted your perspective too."
Veronica considered this, taking a thoughtful sip of wine. "My experience is different. For me, Veronica is an expression of part of who I am, but Richard isn't a mask or a burden. Both are authentic aspects of myself." She placed a manicured hand on Ashton's arm. "That doesn't mean your experience isn't valid. If Catalina is your truth, then perhaps it's time to let her live in the sunlight." The conversation stayed with Ashton long after the dinner party ended. Over the next few weeks, he continued sessions with his therapist and began consulting with a doctor who specialized in transgender care. The possibility of transition, once a distant and terrifying concept, began to feel like a path toward integration rather than further division. Richard remained a steadfast ally through the process, offering support without pressure. When Ashton finally made the decision to begin hormone therapy, Richard was the first person he told outside of his medical team. "I'm proud of you," Richard said simply. "And whatever support you need during this process, you have it, professionally and personally." The changes began gradually. Subtle shifts in body fat distribution, softer skin, the emotional landscape shifting in ways both expected and surprising. Ashton continued working, his professional performance unaffected, strengthened, even, by the relief of finally addressing the disconnect he'd felt for so long. 3 months into hormone therapy, Ashton approached Richard with a request.
"I'd like to transition at work as well,"
he explained during a private meeting in Richard's office. "To begin presenting as Catalina professionally, to use she, her pronouns, to become myself, fully." Richard leaned back in his chair, considering.
"There will be challenges. You know that."
"I do, but I also know I can't keep compartmentalizing my life. It's not sustainable."
"You have my full support,"
Richard assured him.
"We'll need to coordinate with HR, develop a transition plan, address how to communicate this to clients. But these are logistics, not obstacles."
The plan they developed was comprehensive. Meetings with HR to establish protocols, a carefully drafted email to staff, training sessions on transgender inclusion in the workplace. Richard insisted on handling the most difficult conversations personally, particularly with clients who might have conservative views. The day Catalina would officially debut at Thomson Financial was set for the first Monday in April. The weekend before, Ashton stood before his closet, running his fingers over the clothes that had once been hidden away, now hanging prominently alongside his suits. Tomorrow, the division would end. Tomorrow, Catalina would step into the light. That Sunday night, after selecting a modest burgundy dress with three-quarter sleeves and black pumps for her first day, she sat at her vanity. The face looking back at her from the mirror was changing. Softer jawline, smoother skin, her brown hair now falling in soft waves past her shoulders. But more striking than the physical changes was the peace in her eyes. Tomorrow, she whispered to her reflection, we become one. Monday morning arrived clear and bright. Catalina dressed carefully, applied subtle makeup, and styled her brown hair in loose waves that framed her face. The burgundy dress was professional but feminine, paired with a simple gold pendant and the black pumps she had practiced walking in for months. The drive to work felt surreal, like crossing a threshold between worlds that had been kept separate for too long. As she pulled into her usual parking space, she caught sight of Richard waiting by the entrance.
Didn't want you to walk in alone,
he explained as she approached. Although I see now that was unnecessary. You look perfectly confident. Catalina smiled, smoothing her dress. I'm terrified, actually, but also ready.
Catalina,
Richard said, using her name officially for the first time in the workplace setting.
You've got this.
They walked in together. The office fell momentarily silent as heads turned, conversations paused. Then Richard's voice, carrying clearly across the open floor.
Good morning, everyone. Some of you will have read the
company-wide email sent on Friday regarding our commitment to diversity and inclusion. Today, I'm honored to introduce you to Catalina Mills, our senior financial analyst, who many of you have known as Ashton. I trust you'll join me in welcoming her and supporting her during this transition. A beat of silence followed. Then, from across the room, Brenda from HR began to applaud. Others joined in, tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Not everyone participated. Some stared in confusion or discomfort, but the wave of support was unmistakable. Catalina felt tears threatening and blinked them back. This moment of vulnerability in front of her colleagues wasn't what she had planned, but perhaps it was exactly what was needed. Authenticity in place of armor. The day progressed with its share of awkward moments, the occasional slip with pronouns, the overly careful interactions from some colleagues, the too loud support from others. But there were beautiful moments too, like when her assistant left a small vase of lavender flowers on her desk with a note that read simply, "The color suits you." By mid-afternoon, Catalina had her first client meeting as herself. The Petersons were long-standing clients, conservative in both their investments and their worldview. Richard had offered to join the meeting for support, but Catalina had declined. This was something she needed to handle herself. Mr. Peterson did a double-take when she entered the conference room.
We're here to meet with Ashton Mills,
he said stiffly.
Mr. Peterson, I am Catalina Mills, formerly known to you as Ashton. I've been managing your portfolio for the past 3 years.
She kept her voice steady, professional.
I understand this may be unexpected, but I assure you that my expertise and dedication to your financial success remain unchanged.
Mrs. Peterson studied her with curious eyes.
This is quite a change.
It is, Catalina acknowledged.
but one that allows me to bring my whole self to my work. Now, shall we discuss the adjustments to your retirement plan that we touched on in our last meeting?
The redirection to business matters helped ease the tension. By the end of the hour, they were reviewing charts and discussing investment strategies with the same rapport they'd established over years of working together. As they were leaving, Mrs. Peterson paused. "That shade of burgundy is very flattering with your coloring," she said quietly. "And your hair is lovely." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was acknowledgement. Sometimes that was enough to begin with. As the weeks passed, Catalina settled into her authentic life. There were challenges, certainly. A few clients transferred their accounts to other advisors. One of the board members consistently forgot to use her correct pronouns until Richard took him aside for a pointed conversation. But there were triumphs too, the way her team rallied around her, correcting others who misspoke. The relief of no longer censoring her gestures or monitoring her voice. The simple joy of being addressed as Ms. Mills by the barista at the coffee shop in the lobby. 3 months after her workplace transition, Catalina was preparing for a major client presentation when a familiar face appeared in her office doorway. Mark Jenkins, one of the junior analysts who had discovered her in the fitting room a year earlier.
"Do you have a moment?"
he asked, hovering uncertainly at the threshold. Catalina gestured to the chair across from her desk. "What can I help you with, Mark?" He sat, visibly uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology for last year at the mall, and for afterward." She hadn't expected this. "I appreciate that." "I didn't understand then." He looked down at his hands. "My sister recently came out as transgender. It's made me reconsider a lot of things, including how I behaved toward you." "That couldn't have been easy for you to say." "It wasn't," he admitted. "But seeing you these past months, how much more confident you seem, how your work has actually improved since your transition, it's been eye-opening." Catalina felt a surge of empathy for the young man across from her, clearly struggling with his own growth. "Your sister is fortunate to have a brother who's willing to learn and change." "I'm trying." He met her eyes briefly.
"Anyway, I just wanted you to know that I was wrong, and I'm sorry."
After he left, Catalina sat quietly, absorbing what had just happened. A year ago, being discovered by Mark had felt like the end of the world. Now, it seemed like just another step on a journey that had brought her here, to this integrated life, to this sense of peace. That evening, as she was preparing to leave, Richard appeared at her office door.
"Dinner?"
he suggested.
"To celebrate your 1-year anniversary."
Catalina looked up in surprise. "Anniversary?"
1 year ago today, a laptop malfunctioned during a presentation, and a screensaver changed 2 lives.
He smiled.
"I'd say that deserves a toast, wouldn't you?"
They returned to Marcello's, sitting at the same corner table where they'd had their first honest conversation. So much had changed since then. The woman in the burgundy dress with flowing brown hair bore little external resemblance to the anxious man in the charcoal suit, who had expected to be fired. Yet the core remained. The analytical mind, the compassion, the drive for excellence that had made her successful in her career. Richard raised his glass.
"To technological malfunctions and unexpected revelations."
Catalina laughed, clinking her glass against his. "To authentic lives and supportive friends."
"You know,"
Richard said after they'd ordered,
"watching your journey this past year has been inspiring. You've shown remarkable courage."
"I had a good example to follow." She smiled. And exceptional support. Not everyone is so fortunate. True, but you're creating ripples, you know. Mark Jenkins came to see me yesterday, asking about our company policies for employees with transgender family members. He's trying to be supportive of his sister. Catalina nodded. He mentioned that. It was unexpected.
Change often is. Richard studied her across the table. You seem happy.
I am. And it was true. The integration of her once divided life had brought a peace she hadn't known was possible. There were still challenges, still days when the world felt harsh or unwelcoming. But she no longer faced them from behind a mask, no longer expended energy maintaining an artificial division within herself. I never thought I'd say this, she admitted, but I'm grateful for that laptop malfunction. Grateful that my screensaver chose that exact moment to reveal Catalina to the world. Without that push, I might have continued compartmentalizing myself forever. Richard smiled.
Sometimes the universe knows what we need before we do.
As they finished their meal, Catalina reflected on the journey of the past year, from the panic of exposure to the peace of integration, from secret nightgowns to living openly, from fear to authenticity. The sequined blue evening gown that had appeared on that fateful screensaver still hung in her closet, a reminder of how far she had come, and of the courage it had taken to become wholly herself. One day soon, she thought, she would wear it again, not in secret, but proudly, under the lights of a world that had more room for her authentic self than she had ever dared to hope.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!